There's a place that's more terrifying than the Appalachian Mountains, more creepy than the Pacific Northwest, and it's a place that I will not even visit at night. It is the Sierra Nevadas. Now, the Sierra Nevada mountains are very old, and they are steeped in mystery. A lot of creepy stuff happens in this area. Now, these are two stories that are 100% true that come out of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, this first story comes from a guy named Taylor. Taylor said him and his buddies decided to go camping deep in the Sierra Nevadas. Now, this particular place, he said, they called Cat Burglar's Corner. And he said a lot of strange things and a lot of disappearances have happened in this location. And he said as they were driving out to this location, they were going down sort of this dirt road. And he said it was very weird because in the middle of this road, they slammed on their brakes because there were a pair of boots, empty boots, just sitting perfectly right in the middle of this dirt road. They got out of the car, they looked around, they couldn't find anything. They thought, that's really strange. So they eventually parked their car and they spent all day hiking out to this campsite. As they're getting their campsite set up, they began to hear like a whew, whew, like a really loud scream. And Taylor recognized it because he had heard it before. It was the sound of a mountain lion. And he said, usually if you hear a mountain lion that time of year, it meant either they were mating or there was like a fight going on. So he said they kind of got alert that maybe there was a mountain lion in the area, and they kept hearing it scream. And then eventually it stopped and it calmed down. So they're like, it probably just got scared and ran away. So shortly after this, Taylor decides he's going to go and look for some firewood. Now, he starts hiking down this trail, and he said he's probably about 500 feet away from their campsite. He said that's when he heard that mountain lion scream again. And so he grabs his bear mace, he starts looking around, like, where is this thing? And then it's just quiet. So he's like, you know what, I better get back to the campsite. So he starts hiking back down the trail. As he's hiking, said up ahead, he could see something standing on the trail. So it was a man crouched down. He was completely naked, very skinny. He was covered in mud, all bruised up. He had sort of this thick, bushy beard, dirty, scraggly hair. And he said, he just seemed very out of place. But he thought maybe this was a hiker that got lost or something and had been stuck in the woods for a very long time. So he yells out like, hey, man, are you all right? Like, what's going on? Are you okay? He doesn't say anything. So he proceeds to walk closer to him. He gets within a couple feet of him, and that's when he's overtaken by this really bad smell, like something is rotting. And he said as he looked this guy over, he could see something was off about him. Like he looked like a person, but kind of not a person. And he just got this really bad feeling, like something was wrong. But he still proceeds to say, hey, like, are you okay? Is everything all right? And he said that's when this guy lifted up his head, looked directly at him, opened his mouth wide, and let out this scream that sounded exactly like the mountain lion scream they had heard before. And he said this thing turned and it took off running into the woods. So he made his way back to the campsite as fast as possible. And all of his buddies are like, are you good? You all right, man? Because like we could hear the mountain lion scream. And he told them about his encounter, and they decided not to camp there that night. Now, this next story takes place in sort of the same general area. There was this man named Lee. Lee said him, his girlfriend, and their friends were camping in the Sierra Nevadas. And he said, after they had finished setting up their campsite, he decided he was going to hike down to the lake and do some fishing. So he makes his way down this trail, and as he's walking along the trail, he said he started to notice that someone was following him. And as he looked back, he said it was this guy with this big, thick, bushy beard, kind of scraggly, dirty hair. He said he was just wearing like these short red shorts, a short sleeve t-shirt, and he just looked kind of homely. And he said this guy was like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, just going down to the lake to do some fishing. And he's like, oh, are you going to keep the fish and eat them? And he's like, yeah, if they're good and like the right size and everything. And he's like, oh, okay. And so he said, that was kind of weird. He just kept, going down to the lake. So Lee gets to the lake, and he said this guy followed him all the way down. And from a distance, he sat up on this rock and started watching him fish. Lee didn't really care, but he kind of got like really weird vibes from this guy. And he said after about 20-25 minutes, this guy said, well, I have to hike 40 miles today. I'll see you later. And he said he just took off and like disappeared into the woods. So Lee was kind of like, you know what, I'm done fishing. I'm going to go back to the campsite. So he goes back to the campsite, and later that night, they're all in bed in their tents sleeping. That's when Lee said he was awoken by his girlfriend shaking him, saying, hey, like there's someone outside the tent. And his friends, they're freaking out. And there's something or someone outside her tent. And he's like, no, there can't be anyone out there. And he says, his friends were like, no, seriously, like there's someone or something outside the tent. So he unzips the tent. He sticks his head out. So there was no one there. It was just completely quiet. And so he said, this happened about 5 or 6 times. And eventually it stopped. He said when he fell asleep, he had this dream that something was outside the tent. And when he opened the tent that time and he looked out, he said there was this man that he'd seen earlier when he was fishing on all fours, growling at him from outside the tent. And then he said, boom, he woke up and it was morning. And he's like, whoa, I had the weirdest dream last night. And they're like, oh yeah, what was it? And he's like, well, I had this dream, that there was this guy outside our tent. And he said that's when his girlfriend and his friends were like that did happen. There was someone outside of the tent all night last night. But you unzipped the tent, you looked out there, and then you went ahead and just laid down and fell asleep. And he said instantly that just gave him chills, and they decided to leave that morning and get out of there.